How y'all doing today? I'm right at home up here because I'm with my peeps, right? Forgive me if I'm a little overdressed. I was told early on when you give a talk, try to dress up and show respect for this place, but this is a little more than that. I'm going to a funeral after this, one of our fallen. And it happens. If you're going to be around here for any length of time, you got to get ready for it to happen. We don't like it when it happens, but it happens. I was thinking about a friend of mine that was telling me what he's doing today. As a matter of fact, as we speak, a friend of ours in the program, he is making a someday a today. You know those things that someday I'll do that. Someday I'll get to that. Well, someday never happens, especially when I've got the disease on my back and it takes away those things that I used to love. Some days never happen unless I make them a today. And one of his some days was to jump out of an airplane with a parachute. And that's what he's doing right now as we speak. It makes me think of a little funny, which is what I am supposed to do when I do any talk is throw a little funny out in the beginning. Hopefully the little funny has something to do with what we're here to talk about and get this little party rolling. One of the things I'll promise you about today is there will be no war stories. This is not going to be like what you're used to hearing. Because most of the time what you do here is 55 minutes of drunkalog and it's, oh, by the way, I'm in recovery, time's up. That's not how I operate, and I don't believe that that's how the newcomer needs to receive this. Because this is about experience, strength, and hope, not war stories, weakness, and despair. My buddy who's doing the parachute reminds me of a little funny. One time there was this guy who's in an airplane and he's fixing to jump out of the airplane for the first time. And the guy has to push him out. So he's falling. It's his first solo flight, by the way. I guess you have to jump out with somebody for a while. Anyway, it's his first time by himself. So he's falling, and he pulls the ripcord and nothing happens. Well, he's got trouble. But his training kicks in, and he knows that he's supposed to stay calm and pull the reserve chute. So he does that, and nothing happens. Well, he's in big trouble. Now picture this, along the way down, he passes somebody coming the other way. And try to suspend disbelief just for a moment that they had a small conversation as they passed. And the guy who's fallen, who just pulled both ripcords, says to the guy, "Hey man, do you know anything about parachutes?" And the other guy says, "No man, do you know anything about lighting gas stoves?" Now that seemingly doesn't have anything to do with what we're here to talk about. But like any good speaker, I'm going to tie it together. I don't know anything about parachutes and I don't know anything about gas stoves. But what I do know about, I'm here to talk about. And that is, I'm Michael W. Smith and I'm an alcoholic. I haven't had a drink of alcohol since September 11th, 1987. But that's not the whole story. Because see, sometimes in recovery, we fall into traps, and I've seen it. We think we can go to AA and still do pills and do dope. We think we can go to CA and still drink. We think we can go to NA and still drink, and vice versa. And I've seen people with different sobriety dates. 17 years ago, I took a toke off a joint. So I don't get to say I have 26 years anymore. I never stopped coming to meetings. So my sobriety date is July 4th, 1996. Although I haven't had a drink in that long. And I have grown up in here. I came in here when I was 22 years old. I didn't drink that long. Thank God our book talks about to be gravely affected. One does not have to drink the quantities or go down as far as some of us have. You know, and the book talks about how I can get off the elevator whenever I want. It reminds me of a thing I heard a long time ago. Well, I'll just aim it this way first. Whenever I hear talks, I hear people talk about how they were born in this particular place and their parents were this particular, and you go into all these things and they really have nothing to do with what we're here to talk about. So the only things I'll tell you about my childhood is only things that are pertinent to exactly what we deal with here in meetings in recovery. Two things about my childhood. The first thing is I was an only child. And you may think, well, what does that have to do with it? Because in Dr. Bob's story, he talked about he was an only child. And it engendered the selfishness that played such an integral part in bringing about my alcoholism. That's why that's pertinent to me, because the world did revolve around me. I'm a little at a loss that he would be standing in that window right now. I think that's a little bit much. It's a little, yeah. This is really something. Here, I'm having to watch this guy paint the window while I'm talking to you folks, but that's good. That's good. Not all of us are dealing with 100% up here, but that's okay. I'll try to deal with 100% and try to stay focused on what I'm trying to talk about here. All right. The second thing about my childhood, and that's the more important thing, is when I was a kid, there was these Wacky Pack stickers that I used to collect. They were little stickers, and I won't go into what they are, but you can imagine any stickers that you used to collect when you were a kid, whether it be football or whatever the stickers are. Down at the bottom right-hand corner, it said number 5 of 200 or 10 of 200. There was a full set of these stickers. And even if I had to go spend every dime of my money, and which was not much when I was a kid, I used to get a quarter a week allowance when I was a child. I'm probably dating myself, but that's okay. I'm no longer 22, and I probably no longer look 22, although sometimes I still feel 22. And that feels pretty good, to still feel young at heart. So anyway, I would be completely obsessed to get the entire set of these stickers. What does that mean? That means I was dealing with the addictive personality before I ever took a drink. I had to have the whole set. I didn't know why. I knew I was obsessed and would go buy package after package till I put the whole set together, and then life was good, and then the next set of stickers came up. Now, if anybody can relate to that, you know exactly what I'm talking about, because chances are we had to deal with an addictive personality of whatever sort before we ever took a drink, and that leads into why I needed a drink, right? Took a lot of stuff to stay out there, didn't it? A lot of moxie. Reminds me of a joke by the late Richard Pryor. He talks about a guy, he's on stage, he talks about a guy that he's going to get a job. He's playing a guy that's trying to get a job. And at that point, he's playing on the other side of the desk. He's playing like he's looking at a resume. And he says, "Sir, we see your resume here. We don't think that you are what we're looking for. We don't think you're responsible. We don't think you're dependable." And then Richard Pryor plays the other part, the drunk who's trying to get a job. And he says, "What do you mean I'm not dependable? For the last 5 years, I've had a $500 a day drug habit. I haven't missed a payment." Now, what does that have to do with what we're here to talk about? It has everything to do with it. Because there's newcomers in here that wonder if they have what it takes to make it. And that particular little skit says that we do have what it takes to make it. Because think about the energy it took for me or the guy in that skit to never miss a payment. That takes a lot of energy and effort. Wow, if I could just take a fraction of that effort and put it in here and work these steps. Our book talks about it. Half the zeal, he said. My Heavenly Father will not let me down. And I'm here to report that He hasn't let me down. Now, I let myself down for a mere moment 17 years ago. But my Heavenly Father has not let me down. Because I've stayed here and maintained the fight. And I know our book says we've ceased fighting, but I tell you, sometimes every day seems like a battle. Some days in recovery seem like a battle. The big book talks about in Ephesians, I need spiritual armor to fend off the things that come at me. I need to have God's power in me to help me, because I don't believe the lower power wants me to be happy in here. I don't believe He wants me to be happy, joyous, and free. If you're a newcomer, you should know that right out of the gate. There's going to be things thrown at us that are going to test our resolve. Speaking of testing of resolve, and thinking of why I'm here, what I'm wearing, and I reflected back on the opportunity that I've been given to be here. And this is not going to be a death meeting, believe me. I never like it when somebody mentions somebody dies, and then the whole meeting's going to be about death, and then the next week is going to be about death, depending on who they are, how high up in AA they are. But the thing about it is that when it says pain is the touchstone of spiritual progress, I've been given an opportunity to be here. There are other people, one of which I'll see in a little while, that will never have that opportunity. Pain is the touchstone of spiritual progress, and sometimes we read right past these things in the book without thinking about what they mean. And they always have a deeper meaning if I'm willing to investigate. And I highly recommend you investigate our text, because there's some serious secrets in there that I used to just read right over. Pain is the touchstone of spiritual progress. Every one of us know what a touchstone is. I know what I thought it was. When I read it, I thought it was the thing that a racer stands in where before he goes off the starting line. I thought, well, that must be a touchstone. He puts his foot on it. I didn't know what it was. I really did not know. I just, in my mind, it's like laurels. We all read laurels, but we don't know what they are for real. I thought it was my ass, rest on my laurels. But touchstone is the thing that when you go to a pawn shop and you pawn your jewelry, he always rubs it on something to find out if it's real. That's called a touchstone. And pain is the touchstone of spiritual progress, because it's only through the challenges that I go through in recovery and have it rubbed up next to that touchstone do I see the quality of my program. Because if every day was a sunny day, I could say that I had a great program, but I really wouldn't know. But it's going through challenges in recovery, emerging on the other side, having that calamity matched with serenity that not only bears witness to myself, but bears witness to others that I would help. I think I read that somewhere in the third step prayer, didn't it? It says, victory over these bears witness to those that I would help. So, although we don't like to say it, pain is the touchstone of spiritual progress, I cannot not say that I need it. I need to have challenges in recovery to keep me in check, to make me get back on the beam, to redouble my efforts, so to speak. And sometimes that means calling bullshit bullshit. Sometimes you got to tell people the truth in here, knowing that they're not going to like it. But I needed to be shaken up. Because this is not a disease that you can pat on the head and tell it everything is going to be okay. I'm afraid I would be falling down on my duty if that's the way I operated. So, what is the joke about Richard Pryor? The energy. Willpower gets a bad rap in here, doesn't it? We say, well, willpower has no place here because willpower didn't work for me. Well, I'm here to report that if that little joke about the guy not missing a payment has any truth to it, and how I led into what we're here to talk about has any validity about how if I put that energy in this direction that I can't fail, then maybe self-will does play a part. Maybe not self-will, willpower, excuse me. The 12 and 12 talks about it on 61 in the 12 and 12. Bill W. says, let no one say that this program takes no willpower. Here is one place it may take all you've got. Now I have to believe if he says that he means it. I have to believe that if he says that, then he understands the joke about Richard Pryor, even though he wrote the book before Richard Pryor was born. He knows about the energy that I expended to stay out there, and he knows that I need to take that energy and direct it in this positive direction, and that I can't fail. I'll give you some good news. Who remembers the old TV program Star Trek? Yeah, not the new one with the bald-headed dude. I'm talking about the original. Captain Kirk and Spock, my boy. I always liked him because he always knew what time it was. No matter what was going on, what time is it or how long we got. He knew down to the second. Somehow that always appealed to me, his intelligence. When they went down on the transporter, there was a few people that was always on that transporter. All right, no matter what the show was, they had to go down there and fight the old girl that was going to put their fingers on your face, suck all the salt out of you. She looked like a good-looking chick, but in the end of the thing, you saw that she was a monster. He's going to go down there and fight that lizard, the Gorn, you know. I mean, they got to go down there and fight somebody. Okay, so they always get on the transporter. There's Kirk, there's Spock, there's some good-looking chick, and there's a couple of other people that you know for a fact, if you've seen 2 episodes of that show, let alone 150 or ever how many there was, what's the guys that ain't coming back? What shirts are they wearing? Red. The red shirt dudes ain't coming back. You could set your watch by that. You don't even need Spock to tell you what the deal is. They ain't coming back. Why am I talking about Star Trek? Just like all these other things, I'm talking about it to make a point, to tie it to what we're talking about here. And the reason I'm mentioning it is because I don't see nobody with red shirts in here. That means we all got the same chance to come back. There's newcomers in here. Ain't nobody got a red shirt. We all got the same chance to come back after going doing whatever we need to do on a daily basis. That's the reason I tell that story, to start this talk off on a positive note, to pull us all into the same commonality. The reason for these past things, you notice my tone changed. It's time to change the talk. The reason for these stories was not just to talk about me, but to talk about you, because I am you, right? We are no different. That means the same energy I expended out there, I've put in here, I can make it. That's the same energy you have. Probably the same challenges I had as a childhood. You had the stickers, the selfishness. And I have it. We're all together. And we're all together on this transporter. And we all have the same chance to come back. I don't care how long anybody in here's got. See, I almost didn't even go into my sobriety date, because so many times what we do is we listen to somebody's sobriety date and we use that and that alone to gauge whether we should listen to them or not. Because we say to ourselves, well, he ain't got that long, so I don't have to listen to him. Or he's got 30 years, I better listen. I have learned in my tenure here that that's not exactly true. I have learned that, like it says on 32 in the 12 and 12, the answer to the riddle has to do with the quality of one's faith rather than its quantity. And why would I tell that story? Because if you're a newcomer and you hit the ground running and you do this deal, you can be happy, joyous, and free and have peace of mind. And be assured that when your medal of your recovery is rubbed up against that touchstone, you will be just fine. That's what Bill was talking about on 14. He felt utter confidence. As I stand here today, especially with where I've got to go after this thing, I am utterly confident I will not drink today. There's got to be some good that come from that kind of feeling. And I promise you, if you work the steps, that's the kind of feeling you can have. Because the feeling that the Grim Reaper is standing over me, wondering when he's just going to lop my head off, that is not a very good, solid feeling. That is a scary feeling. That is a helpless feeling. That is a powerless feeling. Let's talk about this word powerless. What does the word powerless mean? Webster's dictionary says powerless means helpless and hopelessly ineffective. Hopeless and helplessly ineffective. Our steps say that we were powerless. There's a lot of past tense things in this book that I really should take note of. The word power is mentioned 63 times in the first 164 pages. The word powerless is mentioned once. I stand before you here today having a program in my life and having a God in my life, and I no longer feel hopeless, and I no longer feel helpless, and what I'm doing is most definitely effective. And the reason I want to say that is because a lot of times we'll get caught, and even after years, we'll still be saying the same mantras that we said when we got here. When the fact of the matter is, we need to realize if we're not careful, instead of the message, we'll be carrying the mess. Because if it's true that I need to have a transformation of thought and attitude, like the book talks about, then my message needs to change. That's why I have to come up here and tell you I've recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. And that I'm no longer powerless because I have God in my life. What I'm doing is effective. I don't feel helpless and I'm not hopeless. Now, you don't have to accept that, but it is a fact. And chances are, since I've framed it that way, and I've had a little practice at this, you're entertaining the thought that maybe since you have God in your life and you have a program and you don't feel helpless or hopeless and what you're doing is effective, you're taking stock in the fact of wondering, am I still powerless too? It's a question that we all have to ask. It's not a question that once it's answered, you say, oh wow, I've got my diploma, I don't need to come back. Don't be confused. I don't need but one meeting a week, but I go to 14 because I don't know which one that is. A guy named Happy Jack that died with throat cancer about a decade ago used to say that. I still give him credit because that's too cool for me to have made up. I don't need but one meeting a week, but I go to 14 because I don't know which one that is. So I still go to meetings all the time. You know, when I think about it says we were powerless, I got to talk about why did I keep going back? Why did I keep going back and drinking after I sang the Alcoholics National Anthem? I'll never do it again. Now see, it's already 11:30. We have very little time together. And notice I ain't talking about no war stories. We could talk about 3 hours just like this. We have very little time together. I am forced to try to put together in about 45 minutes a talk that you know, it just would take longer. So I'm gonna leave here thinking, man, I should have said that. I should have said that. But I know what I didn't say is a bunch of war stories that mean nothing, because you don't want to hear, nor would it assist us, a story about me waking up the next morning after a drinking bout when my mom's trying to carry me to work because I had already got my license revoked. I just got out of the shower thinking that I'm nice and clean and I've got my tuxedo on because it's 1984 and I'm working as a banquet waiter over at the Winfrey Hotel. And I'm thinking I'm Mr. Dapper Dan, and Mom says on the way, honey, I smell that alcohol coming out of your pores. Is that story going to assist us? No. That's why I don't do war stories, because they don't do nothing but divide. Because if I talk about alcohol and you didn't do alcohol, you've shut me down, and vice versa, and all the rest of that shit. And where did you come from, and where did you go? Well, I didn't go there. See, it's a whole loop of shit that goes nowhere. That's why I don't do war stories. This is about experience, strength, and hope, not war stories, weakness, and despair. By now, I should be able to do a little bitty hour talk and not have to bore you with stories about that ad nauseum, because it has no benefit. And there's newcomers in here that need to find out how to stay out of the ditch, not have me up here describing the walls of it. Why was it that I had to go back? I'm going to talk about the first couple of steps. I'm going to get into some steps. I usually get caught up end up talking about 1, 2, and 3 because time is running out, and I fail to get into the steps that really matter. The ones that's going to keep me out of the ditch. So the reason after I sang the Alcoholics National Anthem, I kept going back is because alcohol did something for me, right? Because the doctor's opinion talks about I drink because of the effect, but that doesn't quite do it. There's another effect. It's more powerful, and it's something we read in every single one of these meetings. Grace Slick, a long time ago, I remember when I came in, I was in treatment in 1987, and I heard she was on the news, and she said, because she was in recovery, and she said, alcohol worked for me for a while, then it started working on me. And I've used that ever since. It really had an effect on me because it did work for me for a while. It gave me those promises that we hear in every single one of those meetings. Because when I took a drink of alcohol, I knew a new freedom and a new happiness. When I took a drink of alcohol, my fears fell from me. When I took a drink of alcohol, my whole attitude and outlook upon life changed. Now, I come in here hardwired for these promises to be fulfilled from only one place because I'm only used to getting it from drugs and alcohol. Now, I come in here and I'm in recovery purgatory, right? They've taken all that away from me. Now I don't have the steps either. And I'm sitting here with no promises at all, but I'm hearing them read about them in the meetings. The effect is that alcohol gave me those promises. And unless I work the steps in here, I'm not going to be getting them again. And the first challenge of life is going to come up. And I'm going to revert back hardwired like a computer. And I'm going to go back to get those promises, even if I admit it's injurious. You know, we talk about resentment being the number one offender. But I'll tell you, our book talks about greatest enemies of us alcoholics. What is that? The greatest enemies is what I just talked about. It's on 145. It says the greatest enemies of us alcoholics are resentment, jealousy, envy, frustration, and fear. In another part of the book on 37, it talks about just what I did. I've done this. It says sometimes we feel ourselves justified in taking a drink. Feeling ourselves justified by nervousness, worry, anger, depression, jealousy, the like. And my personal experience is my justification for a spree was insanely insufficient in the light of the havoc me going back and doing it again created. So what are these enemies? It's just life. Jealousy, envy, frustration and fear, nervousness, worry, anger, depression, jealousy. I'm not used to feeling those things when I get here. I'm used to taking alcohol in solid or liquid form and anesthetizing those and pushing them deep down within myself. It's no wonder the first time that those feelings show up, I get squirrely and my mind reverts right back to where it used to get those promises. And most of us go right back to taking a drink and we don't even know why we do it. That's why we do it. That's why I did it. I need to change some things. I need to flip some scripts, and that's what the steps do for me. It helps me to learn how to persevere and deal with those feelings of life that are most definitely going to come up, and learn how to come out the other side, bearing witness to not just myself but to others. You know, it wasn't until I realized that I was going to drink again, no matter how bad I wanted to quit this time. That's getting the first step, by the way. It wasn't until I realized that I was going to drink again, no matter how bad I wanted to quit this time, that I needed God, right? It wasn't till I needed a solution, till I wanted a solution. I didn't want a solution till I knew I needed one. But I come in here and I remember having the problems with God, you know, the God of my childhood, still circling the First Baptist Church, striking down sinners. And the thing about it is that I had to get what's called the religion of common sense. A lot of people may not be aware of this. I was excited to find this out. I read AA Comes of Age. It's one of our history books. I highly recommend you check it out. It talks about what was underneath the surface in Bill's story when Ebby came to see him. So Ebby comes to see Bill, and if you recall in our book, where it says, he says to Bill, he says, I've got religion. Okay? Here's what's not in the book. He says, what brand of religion is it? And Ebby says it's the religion of common sense. And that's why on 13 he says, my common sense has thus become uncommon. See, I never did get why he said that, but that's why he said it, because of what Ebby said to him. What's the religion of common sense? I could tell you some historical reference that he got that word from the Common Sense of Drinking by a guy named Peabody that they used to read in the Oxford group, which would be true, but that's not really what the religion of common sense is. I need to get in touch with the religion of common sense, and what is that? I need to get the simple fact that I need a concept of a God that will forgive me for what I've done, but expects me to live differently. Because see, we say all the time that God's going to do for me what I can't do for myself. But what we leave out always is God's not going to do for me what I can do for myself. And that has everything to do with James 2, faith without works is dead. That's one of the pivotal points that our book tries to get across, that faith without works is dead. It's the parable of the talents. God gives me things, special skills and abilities in my life, and if I don't use those, He's going to take even those away. The difference between religion and spirituality, in my opinion, and I'm here to report, I've learned this through my own experience, and that's what I'm here to talk about. My experience coupled with what I've learned out of the book to give an accurate and coherent message to newcomers, many of which will never crack the first page open. Believe it or not, a lot of people try to stay sober off what they hear in meetings. That's what happens to us. Because that book is so daunting. It's so thick. You're going, I don't know what's in it. I don't know where to find anything in it. It's very scary, and I can understand. So the difference between spirituality and religion is very simple. We get caught up into where they made me go as a child. We get caught up into the different hypocrisies we see of these guys on TV doing whatever, and they're supposed to be the head of this thing. We see the inconsistencies of things we see, people talking in religion and killing people. I mean, it doesn't make any sense, so it sort of turns us all the way off to it. The difference between spirituality and religion is easy. It's separating what about religion that doesn't work from what does. So let me talk about a couple of things. Wait a minute, our book talks about see where religious people are right. Well, it's easier to see where they're wrong, and that's where I'm going to go with it. And then it's going to be clear what the religion of common sense is, and you're going to be sold on it because it's so simple and it's so obvious that there's no way to mistake it. Whether I'm spiritual or not has nothing to do with whether I eat bacon. Now, this is usually the response I get. What are you talking about? We're talking split hoof, okay? There are certain religions that say you can't eat bacon. Does that have anything to do with whether I'm spiritual or not? Absolutely not. Whether I'm spiritual or not has nothing to do with whether I say 9 or 10 Hail Marys this week. That has nothing to do with whether I'm spiritual. There's even people that bastardize the Bible and go drink snake venom. They find one scripture that said it's cool to drink snake venom. That has nothing to do with whether I'm spiritual or not. And the last one, and this is my post 9/11 dig, this is the one I like to throw out after 9/11. Whether I'm spiritual or not has nothing to do with whether I pray 15 times a day and face east. That has nothing to do with whether I'm spiritual or not. That is religious dogma, rituals that have nothing to do with spirituality. The religion of common sense is having a God that's going to forgive me for what I've done, a higher power, if you will, but expects me to live differently. And it's gotten rid of all those things that I consider to be spirituality that we've already proved they have nothing to do with it. My God lets me eat what I want. He lets me pray in whatever direction I care to. And He doesn't need me to have vain repetitions for Him to hear me. It's about sincerity. It's about the answer to the riddle that I talked about on 32 and the 12 and 12. It has to do with the quality of my faith rather than its quantity. And that has to do with the quantity of times I say something, the quantity of times I pray, the quantity of times I face a certain direction, the quantity of times I do or don't eat bacon. It's about quality and sincerity. And if I have it, I can have a spiritual experience, and I did. I remember the night that it happened. As a matter of fact, I was in a meeting, and it was over at Old Primary Purpose, and Tim Bear was in there. Maybe a couple of you remember Tim Bear, but anyway, he was in there. And for some reason, I had shared, and my mom had shared with me earlier that day, because I was going through this thing, the spiritual experience. I was in the second step reading, and she shared with me a verse that said, "Rejoice in the Lord, and you'll receive the desires of your heart." And for some reason, I shared that shit in that meeting, and I started crying like a baby. And I'm not talking about playing Misty for you. I was a mess. And all of a sudden, I started sharing about how I was free, and I didn't have to drink no more. And all of a sudden, the significance of that scripture washed over me, because up to that point that I thought the desires of my heart was the right chick, the right car, the right amount of money, and all these things, but that had nothing to do with the desires of my heart. That was the desires of my mind. The desires of my heart, I realized I already had at that moment. Some peace, a feeling that I was safe, a feeling that I was free, a feeling that I didn't have to drink anymore. Because when I came here, all I could hear is y'all tell me I can't drink anymore. But I'm here to report at some point along the line, it starts being, I don't have to. Because there's a big difference between I can't do something and I don't have to do something. That, my friends, is true freedom. That's when life begins. You know, I came in here, I was, as young as I was fixing to get kicked out of the house. I failed out of college. My dad was making me go into the military. I won't go into any of the details other than the fact that the reason I mentioned that I'm like you is for this statement right now. You know, when it talks about on 21, talking about describing the real alcoholic, it says more good things about us than it says bad. Special skills and abilities. He may be one of the finest fellows in the world. He may have a promising career. The word genius is used. Of course, let us drink for a day and that changes. But he makes it clear that we have things about us that are good. Because when I came in here and I thought I had to say I was an alcoholic, it meant everything I said, everything I did from that point, everything I thought was wrong, and I was just broken in every way. I'm here to report that that's not true. Even our book talks about in employers, you have 2 alcoholic workers do the work of 5. I'm trying to build you up here. This is good news if you're a newcomer. You are not broken. You can do things. Why am I telling you this? Because I told you I came in fixing to get kicked out of the house, forced to go in the military, failed out of school. I stand before you in recovery, having become an attorney at law and a certified public accountant. And I have more degrees than I care to mention. Now, what that did for me was show me that I told myself a lie when I got here, that I was broken. And that was for those other people. We don't do things like that. I might as well talk about the different kinds of fear, because fear dovetails into why I keep going back and drinking. And I can have 3 kinds of fear. And I remember having this kind of fear. I can have driving fear that makes me go out and make bad decisions based on inaccurate information. Our book talks about 100 forms of fear. I'll share with you 3, and the last one is good news. What I have to do in the face of driving fear is I have to have pause between impulse and action. And I got to try to get better decisions, because after something goes bad, I was always the guy that kicked my own ass. You should have done this. You should have done that. And the reason I pause and try to get better information is so in that time, I say to myself, you made the best decision you could based on the facts you had at your disposal. It's okay, Mike. You did the best you could. The second kind of fear, crippling fear. That's the kind of fear we just sit and do nothing. If you're like me, and you are, after it goes down, I kick my own ass for doing nothing. That's when I really need God's help and to face some of my fears and step out in courage and know that I'm giving it the old college try, and I'm doing what, and if it doesn't work out the way I wanted it to, it's okay. I'm going to dust myself off and get up. What about that last kind of fear? The good kind of fear. I call it motivating fear. And it has everything to do with what we talk about here in meetings. When I was taking the bar exam, I remember I thought, man, I bit off more than I could chew. That's for these other people. I remember taking a tennis ball and writing on this tennis ball, "Don't give up," so I put it on the front of my desk so I see it every time I sit down. Now it's on the front of every cell phone that I ever have had since then, so I see it right when it turns on. The fear that I couldn't do it made me try harder. And when I translate that to this program, if you're a newcomer and you have fear that you don't have what it takes, let that fear motivate you to try harder, and I promise you'll make it. That's the message I'm trying to carry. Let it motivate you, not demoralize you. When somebody throws out those statistics that 95 and 100 don't make it, say, I'm going to be one of those 5, and that's exactly what I said. I want you to be one of those 5, because like I said before, I don't see any red shirts in here. So there's a lot of 5%ers in here. And that's the good news, and I look forward to seeing you next year here. Like I said, I had that spiritual experience. I started crying like a baby. There was girls in that meeting. And there for about 30 seconds, I didn't care. I was crying like you ain't never seen nobody cry, saying that I was free, and I felt this overwhelming feeling of love, a lot of like what Bill was talking about in his story. You know, we give having a spiritual experience a bad rap in these meetings. We almost disparage it. Say, I didn't have one of those burning bushes. I had an education. Well, that's okay, but maybe you should think about trying to have one, because it can have an effect. And if our author had it, maybe it's something to be strived for, not made as a punchline. So there I was crying, really, really feeling free, and all the good stuff that I talked about. And there was girls lined up on this counter. They were sitting up on the counter similar like that one. And a few of them I was wanting to go out with. This is back when I could, well, I probably shouldn't say this, but there was a time I could have probably anybody I wanted to. And I was young and it was happening. That's part of why I got the rep that I got now, that you can't hardly damn outlive. It was quite the fun time, and we're going to do what we do. But what I learned from it is try to consider other people's feelings. And don't misuse the love word to get a response, a reaction, or a result. You know, it's part of that chosen ideal. So anyway, they're sitting up on the counter, and I swear it was probably about 20 seconds. I was crying like a baby, and I didn't care, and it didn't even enter my mind that they were there. And then all of a sudden, this little voice came in the back of my head. They're sitting up there. They're looking at you. And then all of a sudden, the tears went away, because self took over, and I stopped crying. But the reason I'm telling the story is because that feeling is always underneath the surface. That feeling that I felt that night. You know, and whenever I talk about it, I'm telling you, this shit is real. This ain't no joke. Did you just see what just happened? In an instant, I can feel that peace and that serenity, and I almost just cried. It can happen. It's real. This stuff ain't no joke. You know, we talk about it in meetings. We try to sound cool. Some of us can do it. Some of us can't. But it ain't about sounding cool and singing in here. It's what am I bringing out there? I highly recommend you bring what you sing if you want to stay here. And it's an experience like that that brings upon the feeling of confidence that you know God's with you. And if God's with you, then you're not powerless anymore, because He's with me. His rod and my staff comforts me. I think I heard that somewhere. These things aren't just thrown out to make the pages come out even at the bottom. These things actually mean something. I'm no longer alone. And if God's with me and He don't make no junk, then there's nothing I can't do. And my experience in recovery proves that. What about this? Oh, and it goes without saying that God's restored my sanity. Okay, because insanity here is believing the lie that I can drink again without harm. If I don't believe that lie, I've been restored to sanity. I do not believe the lie that I can drink without harm. There's a million kinds of sanity when you leave that door, and you got doctors' manuals and all these people talking about ADD, ADHD, and all this PTSD. That shit wasn't around when they wrote the book. Somebody's making, it's alphabet soup. And you could go to the doctor and get you some alphabet soup and leave with a sack full of pills, and you ain't no better off when you leave that place than when you got there, because they've convinced you of something that may or may not be true. I could probably go get me a sack of pills today. I know how to act this shit. But I want to be legit. Why did I tell you about what happened to me 17 years ago? I could have come in here and said I hadn't taken a drink of alcohol since September 11th, 1987. Ain't none of you know about it. It's about honesty. It's about being legit. Let's talk about the third step a little bit. This idea about the third step, it may sound a little different than maybe what you've heard before. A lot of times we hear about people say, "Oh, I work 1, 2, and 3 every day." That's just not how I operate. Because our book talks about I work 100% the first step. And I had a belief that God could restore me to sanity, and that belief has turned to faith through action, and now I've been restored to sanity. What, am I going to forget everything I've learned and come to believe again? We may not graduate here, but we don't stay in kindergarten. The message has to change. That third step, I don't work it every day either. And I'm going to give you an analogy that's going to help you understand where I'm coming from. I'm on a train station. I'm sitting at the dock. I've got my luggage. Here comes the train. I'm deciding to get on it. And I get on it. And that's the rest of the steps. The train has left the station. It's been on the rails for a long time. It has culminated in a lot of achievements. We talk about pride being a bad thing. We talked about this in a meeting yesterday. Everybody was parrots going down the road talking about how they don't need no pride. Pride's a bad thing. Pride is having a feeling of self-worth through your own accomplishments or possessing attributes that society thinks is good. There's nothing wrong with pride. It's false pride that we have to worry about. That's my point. We have to watch what we say, because there's one person that's listening to what we say about ourselves more than anybody else in the room that we try to get a laugh from. We listen to ourselves say it. And if I keep saying that I'm this piece of shit and supposed to want to drink and can't think, and this mind is this terrible place to go, and I'm still the same sick, selfish son of a bitch as the first day I walked in, which is what I heard a guy with 20 years at Huffman. He shall remain unnamed, but if you've been around, you know who I'm talking about. I'm the same sick, selfish son of a bitch as the first day I walked in, and I still don't know anything. That's the quote. I made myself remember it. And as a newcomer, when I heard that, I thought, well, wait a minute. And then after I worked the steps and I went back, and that parrot said that same stuff again, but I had something for him this time. I'm the same sick, selfish son of a bitch as the first day I walked in, and I still don't know anything. And I shared behind him and I said, "Thank you, sir. The next time I don't want to know something, I'll look you up." Now, I made his 4-step if he ever did one. But I'm here to tell you, sometimes you got to wake folks up. They don't realize the kind of message that newcomers are hearing coming out of their mouth. And I'm telling you, that didn't help me. I want to hear somebody say they know what's going on, that they're not the same person as when they walked in. They have changed. That's the kind of message that carries depth and weight. You see, we're already running out of time, and I've barely gotten started. I'm at the point in my talk, I'm ready to take my coat off. We're fixing to get down to business, and time is out. I'm right here in my element where I need to be. This funeral thing has thrown me off a little bit, but there ain't no excuses. Homie with the window threw me off a little bit. I should make no excuses. I've been here too long and been shared in too many meetings to let things rattle me. But I admit, a couple of things threw me off in the beginning and got me a little this way. And here I am ready to get down to business, and time is up. I'm not quite sure what I've said, but I will say this. I know what I haven't said is a bunch of war stories. I know I've shared with you some of my beliefs, and here's where My public speaking training has to kick in because my father, when I was 16, and I'll end in a couple of minutes. When I was 16, he made me go to this place when I was 16 years old called Toastmasters International. He made me go in this room with these people with suits on and learn how to public speak when I was 16 and 17 years old. It's no wonder I'm an alcoholic. And also because my mommy put me on the potty backwards once. That's why I'm here. No, that's supposed to be a joke. But no, he made me go to this fucking place, and I did not want to go. He made me read Dale Carnegie every night at the dinner table, a few pages. That is insane. You don't do that to a kid. But what they trained me in that place is people remember two things about any talk you ever hear. They remember what you said in the beginning, and they remember what you said at the end. So what my job is to do is to when I give a talk, is to say what I'm going to say. Then I say it. And then I say what I've said. Because I know that all you're going to remember is what I said in the end anyway. So what I have to do is try to recap what I've talked about to bring you up to where I want you to be, which is I want you to take the message I've tried to convey and not get caught in any minute detail that I may have said differently or not the way I intended. So to recap, what I've talked about is I'm one of you. I talked about we're all on the same transporter, and I don't see any red shirts. We all have the same chance. I talked about that energy that we all expended, and I expended when I was out there, that if I take that energy in here, I will not fail. The story about the guy looking for the job. I talked about the parachute guy. I don't know anything about gas stoves or parachutes, but what I know about, I'm here to talk about. And I think by now, at this time in the talk, I've proven that. I have some beliefs that are a little bit different than some of the things that you may hear, 1, 2, and 3 every day. I've told you what my belief system is on those. I'd like to carry with you the thought that I gave about the train station. And I've gotten on the train, and the train has left the station, and I've been on the rails for a long time. That's why I can't decide again, because the decision's been made. The turning is where I'm at in 10, 11, and 12. We talked about how I came upon this addiction honestly because I was in my childhood and the stickers and the addictive personality, and how I came upon my selfishness honesty. I talked about what alcohol used to do for me and how it started working on me. And now I used those fears that I talked about to motivate me to try harder in here. The driving fear. I need to get better information and have pause between impulse and action. Crippling fear. I need God to help me stand up and face my fears and step out in courage. Motivating fear. I need to let this fear that I don't have what it takes make me try harder. And I promise you, if you do that, He won't let you down. And you get to be here a lifetime later, telling somebody else what's worked for you. And hopefully when you get up here, you won't tell them an hour's worth of war stories, which has no value at all, only to get to the 5 minutes of recovery. And that's just not quite enough time. As you've already seen, an hour is not enough time, if that's what your goal is. So I'll talk about this for about 1 minute and then I'll end. Why do I say what I say at the end of every time I share? That's what I need to say. I say the same thing every time I share right at the end. And you probably know, if you've heard me in meetings, you know that I say a certain thing at the end. Why do I say I've had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps? It's not just because step 12 says, having had a spiritual awakening, you must carry this message. It's saying you got to say this statement. It's because I feel a duty to say what's happened to me and what's brought it about. And I need to hear myself say it because, like I shared about the things that God's helped me accomplish in recovery, somebody in my place can get to thinking, oh, you did all this. You don't need to be around these folks. You don't need all this. Look at all this stuff you've done. You don't even need God. You got some intelligence. You don't need. I need to daily remind myself from whence I came. I need to remind myself where these gifts came from, because somebody like me can make myself forget. I don't know if any of y'all have a built-in forgetter, but I do. So when I say I've had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, it's because I'm supposed to say the sentence, but it's also to show the newcomer this is what's transpired and this is what's given me these gifts, but it's also to remind me I need to stay on the beam. And like I said, and I'll leave with this, I got to go somewhere here in a little while. And it's things like where I've got to go here in a minute that keep me on the beam. We need these wake-up calls from time to time. We need these pain is the touchstone of spiritual progress from time to time. We don't welcome them. Our book promises there'll be ups and downs, but if I'm in earnest, I won't let them drag me down, and a better way of life will emerge when they are overcome. That's on 117. That's the most realistic matching concept that I've ever come across. Because we'll get to thinking if I say the right prayer, my calamity will be instantly matched with serenity, and that's not how life works. This program is about perseverance, and sometimes it's tough. This program is about suiting up and showing up, even when you don't feel like you need a meeting. That's the duty that I've taken up in my life. You know, I feel at a loss this time that I have to go. So many things I wanted to say, and forgive me for not saying them. But I will say one thing at the end, and I've already told you why I say it.
Thanks for being here.